Hey friends, welcome to our Utsuk YouTube channel. This is our part 18 video tutorial on Java programming. In this video tutorial, we're gonna discuss about the static method and static variable in Java. So let's move to the content. Static keyword can be used with class, variable, method and block. Static method belong to the class instead of a specific instance. This means that if you make a member as an static, or if you define the static method, then you can access it without creating its object. So basically, when we define the static method, it can be accessed with the static main method, and in order to access the static method, we can easily access it without creating its object. So another is static variable. Static variable is common to all instances of the class because it is a class level variable. Only a single copy of a static variable is created and shared among all the instances of the class. So whenever we define the static variable, then it will be shared among all of the instances of the class. That is, whenever we create the multiple objects of the same class, then within that all objects, static variable gonna share its value among all the objects. So memory allocation for such variables only happens once when the class is loaded in the memory, and it is also known as class variables. So whenever we create the static variable, the memory allocation for such variable only happens for once, and static variable shares the value among all of the instances of the class. So in order to understand static method and static variable practically, let's move to the NetBeans IDE. Let's open our NetBeans IDE. Let's create a project. Next, practice_17. Let's remove out this comment. So let's rename out this static method. So let's create one method, public static method1. So its return type will be void for now, and it's gonna simply print out inside static method. So whenever we call this method, we can call from the main directly as method1. As this one is the static method, so we can call the method directly like this. So let's run this program. As you can see that it's printing inside the static method. So if we define another method like public void method2, and this one is not static here, inside NonStatic method. So whenever we call this method as method2 here like this, so this gives an error because non-static method2 cannot be referenced from a static context. So in order to call this method, we need to create the object of the class as like this, static method obj1, this is the object name, and new static method like this. And in order to access the method2, we need to access it with the help of the object that we have created here, like obj1.method2. So now whenever we run this program, so it's giving me inside static method and inside non-static method. So in this way, we need to access the non-static method by creating the object of the class. But if we define the static method, then we can simply access it by calling the method name. So this is the major difference between the static and non-static method. So let's create another package in order to see practical example of a static variable. non-static variable. So inside package, I am creating one Java class, static variable. So let's remove out this. So let's create one static variable as static int static var. Let's define this value as 5 here. So let's create one another variable that is non-static variable. We can create simply variable like this, non-static var, and let's define this as 10. So in order to access this from the main method, let's create one main method, psvm. Now let's create the object in order to access the variable, like static variable obj1 equals to new static variable. So we have defined the object static variable. So we have defined one object of the static variable class. Now let's create one another object of the same class so that I could show you the difference between the static and non-static variable, as static variable obj2 equals to new static variable. So let's modify the static and non-static value with the help of object that we have created, like obj1 dot static var equals to, let's define this as 6, and obj1 dot non-static var equals to 11. Now let's again access it from the object 2 as well. So here obj2 dot static var equals to 7, and obj2 dot non-static var equals to 12. So let's print out this value, obj1 static var equals to obj1 dot static var. Simply I'm gonna print out all of the value. So here obj1 non-static var value, non-static. So here it's obj2 and non-static var 2 here non-static. So here what we have done is we have defined one static var and non-static variable, and we have created two objects like obj1 and obj2 here. So here we have accessed this both value from two objects, that is obj1 and obj2. So let's run this program. As you can see this, we have defined the static var as 5 here and non-static var as 10 here, and we have changed its value as 6 and 11 for static var and non-static var. And again with the object 2 we have changed the value as 7 and 12. So whenever we print the object 1 static var, that is obj1 static var, at first it should give us 6, but here it's giving 7 because as it's the static variable, whenever we change the value here, then it shares among all of the objects, no matter how many instances we have created, but this value is shared among all of the objects because of this static variable. So it's giving me 7 here. Now in case of non-static variable, here we define the first value as 10 and we have changed from the object 1 as 11 and from the object 2 as 12. So whenever we print value, object 1 it's giving 11, and from the object 2 it's giving 12. So in the case of non-static variable, it is not being shared among all of the instances, but in the case of this static variable, the variable is shared among all of the instances. So it's only giving the latest value, that is 7. So this is the major difference between the static and non-static variable, as whenever we create the static variable, it is shared among all of the instances that we create, and in the case of non-static variable, it is not shared among all of the instances that we create. So I hope that you have understood the static method and static variable. So in next lecture video, we will cover about the access modifiers in Java. So we will meet you in our next lecture video. Till then, goodbye.